On this Sunday night, nukes in Belarus. Vladimir Putin's plan to station tactical nuclear weapons next door to Russia.
You have a highly dependent leader on Moscow who basically has to follow orders.
Saber rattling or serious threats? The trail of destruction after a tornado tears through one of the poorest areas in the U.S.
We lost everything, but we got our life.
A look ahead to Tuesday's federal budget.
We could be on the cusp of something that looks like a soft landing or maybe a mild recession.
Why economists say it'll be a tricky one for the Liberals. And did you see it? The rare weekend show swooping down across Canada.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. There's a new sign tonight of the growing tension between Russia and the West. For the first time since the mid-1990s, Moscow will have tactical nuclear weapons outside of Russia. President Vladimir Putin says he will set up a special storage facility with Russia's next-door neighbor. Belarus, which borders both Ukraine and Russia, is the Kremlin's closest ally in the war in Ukraine and was used as a staging ground for Vladimir Putin's troops at the start of last year's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, Putin says America has done it for decades. NATO calls the move irresponsible, and Ukraine says it's nuclear blackmail. Redmond Shannon reports on the threats as troops battle it out in a stalemate on the front lines.
Bakhmut, a hellscape that was once a city. Now it is the focal point of a war mostly deadlocked. Russia still unable to take the symbolic location despite months of trying. Vladimir Putin told State TV his next move is nuclear. He will move tactical or small nuclear weapons to Belarus. The Russian president cited the UK sending arms to Ukraine that include depleted uranium shells. And he's blaming Washington too. That's because it's estimated there are around 100 US-owned B-61 nuclear bombs stored in 5 NATO countries. Some analysts say that is a false equivalence because, unlike NATO allies, Belarus is likely having its arm twisted.
You have a highly dependent leader on Moscow, Alexander Lukashenko, who has no legitimacy at home, who basically has to follow orders.
The exiled Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya says this development could make her country a target for preventive or retaliation strikes. Last month, Russia suspended the 2010 START Treaty, an agreement with the US on nuclear warheads. A security advisor to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia's latest move has turned Belarus into a nuclear hostage. NATO is calling it dangerous and irresponsible, but the alliance and the US State Department say it doesn't change their strategy.
This does not really alter the strategic picture. These are tactical nuclear weapons. They could be launched just as well from Russia itself, would not make that much difference.
Ukraine has asked for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, something that would be only symbolic given Russia's ability to veto any resolution. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And in Russia, 3 people are hurt after an explosion in a town south of Moscow. It happened in the Tula region, about 300 kilometers from Russia's border with Ukraine. The blast left a deep crater and damaged several residential buildings nearby. Russia's blaming the blast on a drone, but gave no word on the drone's origin. Honduras has broken long-standing ties with Taiwan and established relations with Russia's other ally, China. Both countries signed a deal in Beijing today. The diplomatic victory, which was expected, shows China's growing increasingly assertive toward self-ruled Taiwan. And it also signals a growing Chinese influence in Latin America. China sees Taiwan as part of its territory, and it's been chipping away at its diplomatic ties with other countries. Taiwan accuses China of luring with offers of economic support. Taiwan is now only recognized by 13 sovereign states. We have some breaking news now. Mass protests have broken out in Israel, including outside Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's home. This comes hours after he abruptly fired his defense minister, who opposed a highly contested plan for a judicial overhaul. In Tel Aviv, several thousand demonstrators blocked a main highway in both directions, chanting and waving flags and lighting a large bonfire. University students have announced a strike from tomorrow morning to protest the proposed changes to the judicial system that would give government control over the appointment of judges and give Parliament the power to override Supreme Court decisions. On Saturday, Netanyahu's defense minister broke ranks and urged the government to put an end to the overhaul. To the southern U.S. now, dozens are dead and homes have been wiped out in rural Mississippi in the wake of a devastating tornado. A rare EF4 tornado took a major swipe at part of the state that was already struggling. Mike Drolet looks at the aftermath and the terrifying experiences of those who lived through it.
This area of rural Mississippi just north of Jackson was going through hard times before a tornado left it looking like a war zone. It's one of the poorest areas of the U.S., and to now have to deal with all this is unimaginable.
We could hear the wind and hear the roof peeling back.
I never thought we would go through something like this.
Officials believe at least 26 people died across Mississippi and Alabama, but it will take time to know for sure.
So I'm looking around town, and I'm saying, I know we can rebuild, but what you do with the devastation, what you do with all the...
The worst of the storm hit at night. You can see the tornado backlit by the bluish flash of lightning. It was huge. A super rare F4 that stayed on the ground for over an hour, cutting a path of destruction 274 kilometers long. President Joe Biden has now issued an emergency declaration, which makes funds available for recovery and rebuild.
We are mindful of the fact that that will take time, but we are here for the time it will take.
In the meantime, 20 million Southerners brace for a second round of storms through Sunday evening, with hail up to the size of tennis balls considered the biggest threat. Mike Drolet, Global News.
Now to a tragedy in Toronto. A 16-year-old boy has died at a stabbing at a subway station, and police believe it was an unprovoked attack. The teen was sitting on a bench at a station in the city's West End when police say he was stabbed Saturday night. A 22-year-old man's been arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Toronto police recently ended extra patrols on transit that were introduced after several high-profile acts of violence. A fifth body is being recovered from the debris of that fire at an apartment building in Old Montreal, and it brings the total number of bodies found so far to 5. The remains have now been sent for forensic identification. 2 people are still missing. The huge fire tore through the Heritage Building on March 16th. The cause is under investigation. Police have confirmed the building contained unlicensed Airbnbs. Airbnb says it will pull listings in Quebec that don't have provincial government permits. A funeral will be held on Monday for 2 Edmonton police officers who were fatally shot earlier this month. There will be a regimental funeral and procession for Constable Travis Jordan and Constable Brett Ryan. They were both shot and killed, responding to a suspected family dispute. Thousands of first responders are expected to participate in the procession, which starts at the Alberta Legislature. And as Canadians still face economic uncertainty and rising living costs, the Trudeau government is days away from releasing its financial vision for our country. The federal budget comes out on Tuesday, and it's expected to have a strong focus on healthcare, clean energy, and curbing inflation. Touria Izri looks at what may be in store and what experts believe the fiscal plan should prepare for.
The cost of living these days is already hard to swallow. Except taxes go up 6% this week on alcohol, too. One more price hike at a time when it's hard to find a deal.
Everything's getting expensive. Groceries, alcohol, everything.
I'm going to cut down on meat. Meat and wine. We're going to all become vegetarians and drink tea.
Inflation is slowing, but not quickly enough. So economists are recommending a beer and not champagne budget.
We could be on the cusp of something that looks like a soft landing or maybe a mild recession. And for the government, those are kind of two somewhat difficult scenario to plan for.
The The federal deficit has fallen, but major bank failures in the U.S. and Europe are not helping the global economic outlook. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland acknowledges the challenges and is promising to help Canadians who are scraping by.
Our government will deliver additional, targeted inflation relief.
Financial experts predict that targeted relief could be another GST rebate. Economists say the government needs to strike a balance. Don't overspend, but don't stop spending money either, and risk losing Canada's competitive edge. The Liberals are trying to lure investment by positioning Canada as a major player in electric vehicle manufacturing.
The Biden administration is moving aggressively on a green transition plan, and the risk for Canada falling behind is not getting some of those jobs.
One of the largest line items has already been unveiled. The healthcare funding deal reached with the provinces adds up to $196 billion over 10 years, much less than the premiers asked for. The Liberals are expected to expand the low-income dental care program as part of their supply and confidence agreement with the New Democrats.
The federal government needs to walk that line of keeping spending very targeted. Otherwise, they do risk making the Bank of Canada's job that much harder.
A risky economic environment without a lot of room for error. Touria Izri, Global News, Ottawa.
And our Donna Friesen will bring you live coverage of this year's federal budget. It begins Tuesday at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific, right here on Global TV, globalnews.ca, and on all our other streaming platforms. An investigation was launched this week after a series of leaks in Alberta oil sands went unreported for months. Industrial wastewater containing dangerous levels of arsenic and other chemicals are stored in about 30 reservoirs across the region known as tailings ponds, with an estimated footprint of 300 square kilometers. The leak is now under investigation by Alberta's privacy watchdog. It took place at the Curl Lake site operated by Imperial Oil. But the incident has raised serious questions about all the tailings ponds. As Heather Yorks-West explains, stakeholders, including both federal and provincial governments, appear to agree that it's time a long-term solution to this dirty problem is found.
Now my kids that are in the back have to live with this for the next generation to come.
When members from several First Nations met with Imperial Oil in Fort Chipewyan this week, tempers flared.
So you see the frustration from all the community, and you see the lack of hope, lack of trust.
Emotions have run high since the community learned wastewater from the nearby Curl Lake oil sands site had been leaking from a tailings pond since last May. While the company informed the Alberta energy regulator, the public didn't learn about the leak until a second spill happened in February.
Part of the Alberta Freedom of Information Act that requires public bodies to, without delay, disclose risks to the environment, the health or safety of the public. And they didn't do that here, and I'm very interested in why.
Alberta's Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner is now investigating the regulator, but only about why the public wasn't informed.
It feels like we really need answers more than just in this specific case was something breached, although that's important for accountability. We need to understand, do we have a broken system? And if we do, how many other complaints go under the radar?
It's why a federal parliamentary committee voted this week to have both Imperial Oil and the Alberta Energy Regulator appear before them.
And I've proposed creating a joint federal-provincial Indigenous working group with participation from the oil companies.
Because beyond the communication breakdown, there is the greater problem of the tailings themselves. 270 square kilometers of toxic wastewater with nowhere at the moment to go.
The risk of having some kind of spill that will get into the drinking water is something none of us want to even contemplate. We want to make sure that we've eliminated that risk. So now is the time for us to figure out what a solution will be.
With the health and safety of people and wildlife on the line, upstream residents say this problem can no longer be ignored. Heather Yorks-West, Global News, Calgary.
Canadian content creators concerned. Coming up, how an American TikTok ban could hurt their livelihood. U.S. lawmakers grilled TikTok CEO this week, just days after the government threatened to ban the popular app over security concerns. TikTok's already restricted on government-issued phones in that country, but this new ban, it would be widespread. And as Alicia Drost reports, it could have major implications for content creators on this side of the border.
Hey guys, today we're reviewing my favorite puppet.
Max Taylor first started creating TikTok videos at the start of the pandemic.
Everything was boring. I wanted to make some videos to make my friends laugh. And things just took off from there.
This is the run a mile with a glass of milk in your hand challenge.
Now he has over 1 million followers.
It opened up doors to comedy writing, to ghost writing, to songwriting. All those things started in this one space, which was posting a video on TikTok.
But the app that brought him so much success is now under serious threat. It's already been banned on government devices in the United States as well as here in Canada over security concerns. TikTok's parent company ByteDance is based in China, raising concerns user data could end up in the hands of the Chinese government.
The bottom line is this: American data stored on American soil by an American company, overseen by American personnel.
Now some U.S. lawmakers are looking to ban the app entirely. University of Toronto PhD candidate Jordan Foster researches TikTok and says there are reasons for concern, but they're not exclusive to TikTok.
TikTok poses many of the same risks that the other competitors do with respect to privacy and confidentiality. So across these mobile applications, quite a lot of personal information is being gleaned about users, and users should be concerned about that.
Foster says a blanket ban could have unintended consequences.
This is an ecosystem that has allowed for many people to make a really generous income in a short period of time, and to ban the application would cut off many creators.
And it's not just Americans who would suffer. Even with no ban in Canada, losing out on the American community of 150 million active users could make it more challenging for Canadian creators.
It would have been almost impossible to grow a brand without the U.S. viewership, for sure.
Analysts believe a complete ban is ultimately unlikely, but they do say that users should have more overall awareness of how their data is collected across all platforms. Alicia Drost, Global News, Halifax.
Ahead, we're going to take you to the forest capital of Canada and tell you what it takes to maintain it. Major cities across Canada have made commitments for climate action and growing greener. But it's the city of Fredericton that's pulling double duty, and it now has a new title to prove it. Natalie Sturgeon has more.
Fredericton may be New Brunswick's capital, but now it holds the title of the forest capital of Canada. The city received the designation and will carry it for the rest of the year.
It was such an honor, and it was also just validation of all of the work that we've done as a city.
The city has two urban forests, known as Odell and Clarny Parks. Odell is a little more than 300 acres with 16 kilometers of trails, while Clarny has more than 600 acres and has 30 kilometers of trails.
And we define ourselves with our trees, and we take special care of them. So to be acknowledged nationally for that work, it just feels extra special.
But it wasn't just the city's commitment to maintaining its urban forests, but the economic investment and industries who've made this city their home. Pearson is with the Canadian Institute of Forestry, the organization who grants the designation.
And the proposal coming in from Fredericton was very strong.
He noted the city's tree commission, which was established 70 years ago, the Hugh John Fleming Forestry Centre, several forestry companies, and the University of New Brunswick's forestry program, all as additional factors in their decision to grant the designation to Fredericton. Pearson also says maintaining these urban spaces requires a lot of planning.
It's a serious business. It's not just planting any tree. It's really having a strategic plan.
The city plants 500 trees per year. Natalie Sturgeon, Global News, Fredericton, New Brunswick.
The Northern Lights danced across much of Canada this weekend. Next, these stunning sights and the science behind the display. There are natural phenomena that have long dazzled anyone lucky enough to see them. The beauty of the Northern Lights can be difficult to describe and just as hard to see. They're rarely viewed beyond this continent's northernmost regions, but in recent days, they've appeared in some unlikely corners of our country. Andrew Benson explains.
The Northern Lights have taken Saskatchewan by storm.
This has been probably the craziest Northern Lights experience I've ever had.
Over the last 2 nights, residents from across the province have witnessed the aurora borealis illuminate the night sky.
There was purples, pinks, blues, greens, yellows, oranges, reds, kind of pretty much everything.
Thousands of images have been shared online of the Northern Lights from every corner of the province.
I laid in the middle of a grid road for probably 20 minutes, just listening to the sounds and watching the skies literally dance above me.
It isn't only Saskatchewan that is seeing the aurora. Provinces across Canada and even some of the northern United States have seen the green and purple lights over the last 48 hours. Dale Bone, an aurora chaser and researcher, said one of the reasons we are seeing the lights is due to the magnetic field in the northern hemisphere.
More particles from the sun flow into the Earth's atmosphere. It accumulates around the poles. If there's more, it tends to expand the aurora and it pushes it further south. So that's when we can see it above us.
Bone currently runs the Aurora Hunters Saskatchewan Facebook group, which is now home to over 54,000 members and has gained thousands in the last 2 days. For many, the experience of seeing the Northern Lights helps bring perspective on the world.
Even when you think something is only going to be dark, there's always going to be light that might pop up.
It almost makes you feel like they almost lift you off your feet. Like it just doesn't even feel real when you're standing under the sky.
Andrew Benson, Global News.
Would love to see that. Just once. That's Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and on behalf of our whole crew, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're going to leave you with cheers for Canada's women's curling team. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.